General Motors was the first manufacturer to introduce some freshness into the full-size SUV segment back in 2015. Now, back then, when this all-new Tahoe came out, it was widely known for kind of revitalizing a segment full of stale offerings. Now, this week, Chevy has sent me over the all-new RST version. It stands for Rally Sport Truck. Think of it as a high-performance version of the Tahoe. So, is this actually the high-performance Tahoe we've been waiting for? That's what we're here to find out. So by now you guys are probably familiar with the fact that the Tahoe is one of 3 different offerings in this big SUV segment from General Motors, and it's also the best-selling and the least expensive version. So when Chevy finally came out with an all-new version in 2015, it was a pretty big deal. Chevy consistently sells about 100,000 of these annually, making it one of their top sellers. Now you can see for 2018, they haven't actually changed the design. It's still very familiar as a Tahoe, although this particular RST Performance Edition blacks out a lot of the elements. Now if you guys don't want to actually spend money for the big motor under the hood, you can also just get an RST Edition, which gives you the look minus the big motor and the suspension upgrades. Now you can see here, I do like the blackened Chevy bow tie emblem, the black front grille, the blackened accents around the headlights, whereas the other trims of the Tahoe will have chrome. Now for 2018, Chevy also made LED daytime running lights as standard. However, if you guys want the bi-xenons that this particular one has, you have to at least go for the Premier model. That's the only way to get the bi-xenon option. The fog lights are also included in the Premier, although you can add that as an option for the lower LT trim as part of like a Z71 off-road package. Now, this is a pretty big vehicle. For this new generation, I believe Chevy actually made it longer in the overall length by about 1 inch. It's also 1 inch wider. And what I love the most about the RST editions are the rims. Those are 22-inch wheels on 285 tires. They just look great. I think this is the best looking wheel on this actual truck that I've seen out of all the 3 versions. And then my tester has an upgraded performance brake, a Brembo brake that you can get as a dealer installed accessory for about $2,800. It certainly will makes this thing stop a lot. Now, the Tahoe is actually the shorter version. If you guys want the Suburban, that's like another foot longer, but regardless, it rides on a 116-inch wheelbase and it's about 204 inches overall, which makes it about 6 inches shorter than the all-new Ford Expedition that I tested a couple weeks ago. Now, at the rear, this is probably where the Tahoe looks a little bit too bland for my taste. I don't particularly love the taillights on the Tahoe version. I think the Escalade and the Yukon have a little bit more distinctive taillights. They are LED accented, but the rest are kind of just incandescent bulbs, and they don't look all that different from the previous generation. The Premier trim, which is actually new for 2017, replaced the LTZ. And then one thing I really like about the RST Performance Edition is the Borla exhaust that comes with this. It's a dealer installed accessory. It makes the vehicles just sound a lot more mean, a lot more just performance focus is what you expect when you buy a truck like this. Now, it's got a foot activated power tailgate, which was, I believe, new last year. The glass also opens separately, which is definitely a nice feature to have. Now, when you open up the tailgate and look at the rear cargo area, this is why some people may choose the Suburban. You're only looking at like around 16 cubic feet of space with the third row up. Now, you can drop these the third row down and it'll roughly double the space. And if you want to fold down the second row as well, you're gonna get around 95 cubic feet of space, which is a little bit less than what you get in the all-new Ford Expedition. So if you guys spring for an LT trim level of the Tahoe, you're gonna get the company's Smart Key Access System as standard with push-button start. It also has remote start, and my particular tester has a power tailgate. You can also open up that rear glass separately. To start the vehicle up with the remote start, just push the lock button, push and hold this center button right here, and that'll start the truck right up for you. To turn off the engine, just push and hold that button until it shuts off for you. Now, when you first approach the Tahoe, you're going to notice there are buttons on the driver door handle. It's also on the rear door handle as well, but when you push this button here, it will lock and unlock the door. There's no sensor on the back of the door handle like on some competitors. Now, my particular tester does have an optional brown leather interior. I believe they call it either saddle or mahogany. I'll have to double check that. But you can see here, this particular interior color combo is new for 2018. I believe it's included on this RST trim as a $250 option. It looks nice. It's a very inviting looking cabin when you first open up the door. There are some elements in here that do remind me of some older GM products, but I think the interior has aged pretty well. My tester doesn't have the optional power deploying running boards. Instead, it just has the fixed running boards, which is fine with me. But to get in the vehicle, there's no handle here on the A-pillar. Instead, I will just kind of grab the steering wheel and kind of pull myself in. But once you're in, you can see here the view out of the driver's seat is very nice and basically what you're expecting in this particular class of vehicle. And then when you shut the door, it still sounds pretty solid. I mean, this particular platform came out in 2015, but it's still relatively fresh, especially when you compare it to some of the newer competition, like the new Expedition. But to start the vehicle up, just put your foot on the brake, push this button here to fire up the engine. Now, immediately I'm noticing the Borla exhaust that my particular tester comes with when you guys go for the RST package. It sounds pretty nice. I have to say that exhaust is included when you guys go for the RST Performance pack, so I kind of would highly recommend it for sure if you guys are going to go for this particular trim. Now, the rest of the interior for this particular model is pretty nice. You can see the materials are kind of more upscale for this generation of vehicle. There's some nice stitching here on the actual dash, on that part of the dash. It's soft touch right here on the upper portion here where you're going to put your, or basically where you're going to touch it. There's some nice stitching here on this instrument panel hood, which is also good. The stitching also continues on the door panel here where there's some faux stitching on this part. It's soft touch. It's nice and leather padded right here. The windows are one touch for the driver, for the front passenger. For the rear, it's one touch down, but not one touch up. I kind of wish they just made it one touch up and down for the rear as well. The mirrors are power folding, which is good because this is a pretty large vehicle. This competes with vehicles like the Ford Expedition. Now, looking at the center stack here, you can see Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is standard on across the board, even on the base LS model. It's an 8-inch touchscreen display. If you push this button here, the screen will still kind of move out of the way where it reveals a nice little storage compartment here where you can put your phone. There's a USB charger in there. You can hide a lot of stuff back there. It's a pretty good size. The screen itself, the graphics, this is the Chevrolet MyLink infotainment system. I kind of think that it looks okay from, you know, the menu standpoint here, but some of the actual screen LCDs displays, they could probably use an upgrade. It's kind of looking a little crunchy, especially to some of the competition. It kind of matches what I've seen in the new Fords with their Sync 3. Here's the navigation display. It hasn't changed. It's the same navigation display that I've shown you in other Chevy products. It kind of tries to work like a tablet, where they've definitely beefed up the speed in here. Just the graphics, they could definitely be improved. I think it's time for General Motors to kind of look into making the map display even better, especially when you guys look at their Cadillac display, or their Cadillac brand with their Q system. But nevertheless, the most important thing is Android Auto and CarPlay. It works well. When you put the vehicle into reverse, you do get a backup camera with some trajectory. It's got front and rear parking sensors. This vehicle will not parallel park itself for you, and there's no 360 camera. I think for this particular segment, I think it could use it. Especially at this particular price level that my tester is at. You can see here it's got dual zone automatic climate control, which is nice. There's a little screen right here. It also has a separate climate control system for the rear seats. It also has heated and cooled front seats with 3 levels. You can also just make the backrest heated. That's a General Motors specialty there, which is nice. No massaging seats. You can't get that on the Tahoe or the Yukon. I believe the Cadillac Escalade offers that. The gauges here, there's a nice helper screen in the center. Although they are starting to look a little bit old. The green color is not my favorite. I prefer what Cadillac uses in the full LCD display, or what GMC uses in the Yukon Denali with the red gauges. The steering wheel here is power tilt telescoping, which is nice. The telescoping function isn't standard. You have to go at least for an LT trim to get the manual telescoping function. Over here, there's some more buttons here. This turns off your lane departure alert, your parking sensors, your power adjustable pedals, your trailer brake controller is here. The 4-wheel drive switch is here. It does have an automatic mode, and then your headlight control there is right here. Your head-up display information, that's also right there, which is nice. I don't believe the Expedition had a head-up display. I'll have to double check that. I believe this is one of the only competitors that actually does offer that feature. Now down here, you can see here, for such a big vehicle, there is somewhat lacking in terms of storage space. I mean, when you push this space right here, I expected it to be much larger. There's some cup holders right here. There's a wireless charging pad here, although my iPhone 10 with the case was not actually charging when I put my phone there. You can see here, this is pretty large. I do like this, although the new Expedition just offered a lot more in terms of actual storage space right here. Same with the Armada. I haven't had a chance to test out the new Sequoia. There is a little bit more storage down here and down here. I do like the stitching that goes throughout here. The glove compartment is a little bit on the smaller size. It is damped but not lined with felt. The seats are really comfortable. I do like the brown leather. They're heated and cooled, as I said. I did find them to be very comfortable on longer trips. When you look above here, you can see there's some more controls. These controls here definitely look a little bit on the cheaper side. You can see there's a nice sunglass holder there. There's a nice little rear convex mirror. This opens up your rear power tailgate, and then your sunroof controls are here. This sunroof here is the standard size sunroof. Don't expect to find a big pano sunroof. It's part of a Sun sound package for like 25 or 2,800 bucks. But if some competitors I know are starting to go to the big sunroof like the new Expedition, but I mean overall the interior feels roomy. Although the storage space is a little bit lacking in the front seat department, and the technology is good. Although I do think that there are some competitors that offer a little bit more tech. This column shifter here is definitely a little bit more old school, where some competitors have gone to the traditional gear lever or the little knob. But overall, I think most people are going to get in the Tahoe and just know how to use it, and they're going to find it to be very comfortable and nice in here. So with a vehicle as big as the Tahoe, you're probably expecting the second and third row to be huge. I'll get into the third row in a second, but let's talk about the second row of this vehicle, because my tester has the captain's chairs option, which is definitely nice. It gives you a kind of a minivan-like pass-through to get to the third row. Now, one thing that really perplexes me is the space back here. You know, I had the new Armada, the new Expedition, and quite honestly, the space in the second row is a little bit lacking. You definitely have more room in its competitors, because one thing I'm noticing, the floor is a lot higher, and it just doesn't feel quite as spacious. Now, it's not bad. I can still get back here and kind of sort of cross my legs, but this is with the seat almost all the way back. There's good foot space, but overall, I'm definitely noticing it's not quite as roomy as some competitors. I'm also noticing not very much in terms of storage. Like, I expected a console to be here to give me more cup holders. There's only one little cup holder here in the door, a little bit of storage down here, and then Chevy gives you some USB ports, and then you get heated rear seats and your own climate control vents. And then my tester also has the rear seat entertainment system, which is one screen. You can option in like a dual screen, but I mean, overall, I just expected there to be a little bit more, especially after testing the new Expedition. The seats themselves, they do recline. They give you the ability to recline, but they don't slide forward and back. And I kind of thought that it should, to give second row passengers more space if there's nobody in the third row. So when it comes time to get into the third row of the Tahoe, getting back here is not pretty difficult. I mean, you can go through the pass-through here, or you can just pull this lever on the seat, and then the seat has a little strut that kind of helps push it forward. And there's a good amount of space to actually access the third row. But let me get back here just to show you guys for demonstration purposes. I'll put the seat back up here. Now, the Tahoe does not have an independent rear suspension like some competitors, which causes the floor here to be raised up. And with the seat up, check this out. I'm 5'7", guys. My knees are practically eating or in my face. Now, obviously I can fix that by just putting my legs over here, but really for how big this vehicle is, it's a little disappointing. Now, if you guys get the Suburban, you're actually gonna have the same third row seat space, because all the room that they gave you is in the cargo area. So the competitors like the Armada or the new Expedition really have a lot more space. You can fit 3 people across here because the vehicle is so wide, but just know that they're gonna have to be shorter adults or kids, and they honestly won't be very comfortable on the third row for longer trips. So what makes this the RST Performance Edition is what you find underneath the hood. Now, in the past, Chevy never offered the big 6.2 small block in the Tahoe. This motor was always limited to the GMC Yukon Denali and the Escalade. For 2018, now they're offering, it still makes the same wonderful 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. Now, the engine itself, it does have direct injection. It has cylinder deactivation. Now, the big news for 2018 is it's now paired with a 10-speed automatic transmission that's basically co-developed with Ford. It's It's going to give you more gear ratio spread. It's going to give you quicker shifts versus the old 6 and 8-speed automatics. The last Tahoe I drove had the 5.3, which they still offer as the base motor if you guys don't want to spend this much. Now, fuel economy, I know some of you probably care about that. It's rated around 1422 with the 10-speed auto, which I believe is a 1 mile per gallon improvement. The Tahoe, as equipped, can also tow up to 8,600 pounds. Now, this vehicle is pretty heavy. It's not really built out of the lightweight aluminum that Ford uses on the Expedition. This one, as it sits, weighs around 5,800 pounds. Let's get out on the road and see how it all performs. So it's been a couple years since I drove a Chevrolet Tahoe. Now, the last version or platform of this truck that I drove was an Escalade last year, around this time actually. I never actually got a chance to shoot a video of that one because it wasn't really that much different. This is the first application that I'm driving of the new 6.2 V8 with the 10-speed transmission. This new powertrain is kind of being offered for 2018 across the board. This is the first time we're seeing the 6.2 in the Tahoe. Now, the last Tahoe I drove had the 5.3. It definitely wasn't quick. Now, the Tahoe has definitely been also one of the better selling versions. I mean, GM was technically the first one to breathe some new life into this segment when they introduced all 3 of these trucks back in 2015. And after driving the new Expedition, the latest Armada, I haven't driven the latest Sequoia yet. Let's see how this particular one, or this, has kind of held up over the years. So the RST is kind of the performance oriented. Now, don't confuse it with the RST Edition with the Performance Edition. This actually gives you the big motor and the upgraded suspension. And my first impressions of this Tahoe RST is it feels like every other Tahoe, but let me put my foot down here and see if that new powertrain really makes a difference. Whoa! Now, that new 10-speed definitely makes this truck launch a lot quicker. I mean, with a wider spread of gear ratios, first gear just feels pretty fast. Now, I actually had it in its 2-wheel drive mode there, and not really any wheel spin, but man, this thing really launches hard off the line. And the first thing you're going to notice is that lovely Borla exhaust. I mean, that exhaust is just one of the best reasons to choose the RST Performance Edition. It sounds a hell of a lot better than the last the new Expedition I drove with that EcoBoost V6. Man, this thing just has a really great burly sounding V8. I mean, GM and their 6.2, their small block engine, sounds great. It has lots of low end torque. I mean, with 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque, you're not going to be really wanting for power. But the sad thing about this truck is the new Expedition definitely feels faster. While it doesn't sound as good, that's for sure, that twin turbo V6 in the Ford feels a little bit quicker. Now, this truck, what I've seen is it gets to 60 in about 5.8 seconds compared to the last 5.3 Tahoe I drove. That's about a little over a second improvement, which is definitely a good thing. But man, this truck, the noise is really what's the best part about it. And that 10-speed has really great shifts. I can't really complain. It's much better than the last 6-speed auto I drove in the Tahoe. Now, one thing this truck is lacking is any start-stop technology. It does have cylinder deactivation, but let me try flooring it again from here and see how it does. There's a little wheel spin. Whoa! God, that sounds great. That sounds fantastic. This definitely feels at that, slightly under 6-second range. It's just, if you put this in a drag race through the Expedition is just slightly quicker. But man, this is definitely the best performing Tahoe I've driven stock from the factory. Now, with the RST Edition, Performance Edition, there's actually no RST badges on this truck. This makes it one of the sportier handling versions of this platform. I mean, and, from behind the wheel on these back roads, the steering doesn't offer much in terms of feedback, but you can definitely feel the upgraded tire size, the upgraded suspension. It feels relatively playful, although you do feel this truck's weight. It weighs still like 5,800 pounds, which is like a couple hundred pounds heavier than the new Ford. But it's definitely not a bad handling truck. The visibility in here is also great. Really, what's kind of a letdown is the ride quality in the Tahoe. It does still have the live axle, and with these big 22-inch wheels, you're going to feel all the road imperfections. It's definitely a little bit of a harsher ride compared to the competitors with the fully independent rear suspensions. If you can get past the bouncy ride quality, it's not horrible. It's just not quite as smooth as you'd think something that's this big would be. Now the visibility in here is also pretty good. I mean, this is just a kind of a traditional boxy shaped SUV. The side mirrors are a little smaller than I'd like. They haven't made any changes, but my tester has blind spot monitoring with the rear cross traffic alert. It also has automatic low speed braking. It has the new active lane keep assist. What it is missing annoyingly is adaptive cruise control. That is still an option at this price point at 78 grand as tested. I think adaptive cruise should be included. GM has kind of been a little bit behind in the times. They still make you pay extra for adaptive cruise, where some competitors have made it as just standard equipment across the board, even on the base trim. But you know, from where I'm sitting here with the great visibility, the comfortable seats, this is a great highway companion car. And if you're going to take it on a back road, this is not going to be a backroads carver just because it's the RST edition. Really what it gives you is just the big motor, better acceleration, a great sounding engine, good looks. These wheels are definitely my favorite wheels I've seen on this particular truck. But this is no way it means like a performance SUV that's, you know, you're going to be wanting to take on some of your favorite back roads. That's the best thing about these trucks, is the fact that they're rear-wheel drive, and you can put it in rear-wheel drive and you can make the tail step out if you'd like. Now, God, the noise is just the whole reason why I love naturally aspirated V8s. I mean, this is one of the last ones you can get. Does it sound better than the last Armada I drove? I'd say they're pretty comparable. It's really just that Borla exhaust that's making this thing sound so much better. It's definitely one of the better sounding of the big full-size SUVs. Now let's talk a little about the fuel economy, because you know that is still an important factor for these things. Now Chevy rates this at 14 city, 22 highway because of the new 10-speed, because of the cylinder deactivation. You know, I've been averaging in my weeks worth of testing around 14 miles per gallon, which is about a mile per gallon better than what I got in the Armada. However, it is down about 5 mpg than the Expedition I tested with the twin turbo V6 and the start-stop technology. On the highway, I got this up to about 20 miles per gallon, so slightly below the 22 with the EPA rated at. But, you know, it's not horrible considering how big it is. This thing still tows up to 8,600 pounds, which is, you know, pretty much up there, not tops in the class, but pretty class competitive. But I mean, overall, if you guys need a family vehicle, my biggest, you know, gripe with this thing is just the, you know, the space in the third row and the somewhat choppy ride quality. But other than that, you know, as a long distance cruiser with that new V8, that Borla exhaust, this is still one nice driving SUV, full-size SUV that definitely will remind you of its truck-based roots every day. So as the full-size truck-based SUV segment continues to heat up, it certainly leaves the latest Tahoe in an interesting place. This is one of the last of the actual competitors that still uses a live axle in the back, which really, as you guys saw, cuts into the third row seat space and the overall interior space, and also makes this one of the more bouncier riding vehicles in the class. Without that being said, after spending a week with the Tahoe RST, the one thing I really love about it is the exhaust and the engine and that 10-speed transmission. Chevy really addressed the kind of sluggish performance issue that I had with the last 2016 Tahoe that I drove a couple of years ago, and it makes this one of the more fun to drive entries. But in terms of practicality, in terms of the ride comfort, in terms of the space, it really is starting to fall behind, and that's kind of where GM needs to rethink the design of the rear suspension when they actually do redesign this, when it's based on the all-new Silverado and GMC Sierra that just came out for 2019. With all that being said, how much is it going to cost to put a Tahoe in your driveway? Well, this is actually a little bit less expensive than most of the competition. Really, the only thing that's cheaper is the Armada. Base Tahoe with two-wheel drive and LS starts at around $47,500. If you guys want four-wheel drive, it's going to cost you about $3,000 more. Now, nobody really buys the base LS. Most of you are probably going to go to an LT. That one's going to start around $56,000, and then most of them with options are going to run you around $60,000, which makes it a relatively good value. Still expensive, but everything in this segment kind of is. Now, this one is pretty darn expensive. The Premier trim starts at around $66,500, and then my tester with the RST Performance package adds about $8,000 in options. All in, this one is stickered for around 78 grand. Now that is basically the same price as that Expedition Platinum that I tested, and to be honest, aside from the, you know, the better sounding exhaust, that lovely V8, the good transmission, I think the Expedition is probably the more practical vehicle. This certainly has its strengths. However, if you guys actually need the capability, the better towing, the better ride, more room, you're probably going to want to choose the Ford, although there is definitely some things to like about the Tahoe. But anyways, with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview of this 2018 Chevrolet Tahoe RST Performance Edition. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.